KindaSound Radio. We're tuning in for change.
Good morning and welcome to the KindaSound Astrology Show with me, Stella Grace. Welcome Facebook, welcome Instagram, and live on air at KindaSound.org. It's a really exciting show. I say this every week, it's a big show, but it really is. The energies are amazing. We're going to cover the astrological weather for the week ahead. We're looking now until the 19th of April with that, and we'll discuss that as we go through the show. But first, we're going to come on to our topic, which is also really linked to the current astrology. So we'll be weaving through the topic and the astrology throughout the show. But I am going to start with our topic, divine masculine energy rising. Now, this is super hot at the moment in terms of the energy is so activated, so current, and I'm seeing so many signs from the universe, actually. It's one of the ways I get my information to share the info with you. I kind of read the energy and I feel the energy, and I notice things that are coming up and themes, and it always links in with the astrology. So we've got lots of synergy going on, and there's lots of conversations happening about this as well. So we're going to get into some of that. So not only is the astrology really aligned for it now, and I've got the chart here for the week, we're going to come onto that in a moment, but there's lots of king energy. So this is one of the points I wanted to start with. So King in terms of this real sovereign essence. Now, I think it's fair to start with the toxic masculine to show what we've been going through energetically for some time, unfortunately for eons, in terms of the toxic side of the masculine. And this impacts on all of us. This impacts on men and women in our own. We all have the aspects of feminine and masculine within each of us. So this is not singly pointing to men as a topic, but it's about masculine energy. But it obviously covers a lot about men, but also as women as well. There is a lot to kind of consider here. So I've noticed this real essence of king energy around. And what I mean by that is a sovereignty and a connection to our power in a positive sense. And again, where this kind of fits into the feminine as well, feminine and masculine energy and divine feminine and masculine energy are rising together. There's not, we want to move away from this imbalance, and things we're together, we rise. And that is a lot about the energy of unity and where we are moving. And the astrology is aligned for that as well, particularly over the next 20 years. It may not be an overnight thing, and it's certainly been an incremental thing over many years as well. But we're seeing some really big shifts now. So I think, to be fair, we start by looking at the toxicity of masculine energy, which shows us, actually gifts us that raising awareness of it, because by seeing the shadows, we're able to then kind of access the light side. And it's shown when the shadows are shown, they become clearer, and then we're able to access the more divine energy. So if we think about the fact that patriarchy has ruled in terms of a dominating negative power and force for eons, for many years, since witches and those who lived organically from the land. I talk about this a lot, and witches being men and women, but mostly women were suppressed over a long time ago with the rise of patriarchy. And so we have been led for too long in this toxic masculine sense, but things are changing, and things have been changing for some time. And actually, if we look back to around 2012, that was a really peak time, and there were sages and wise ones, and I think the Mayan astrology had predicted this for years and years. This 2012 date was really significant and was talked about by a lot of people for a long time. And what 2012 saw wasn't the end of the world. It was a big awakening. It was a big shift. It was a big surge in awakening energy. And since then, we've had more more of an imbalance. So more of the imbalance kind of leveling out to a more rebalancing structure in the genders and in the divine feminine and masculine energies. So and then if we think fast forward on a bit further, if we think about 2020 and, you know, the atrocities that lockdown and that patriarchal power brought in, so it didn't have to necessarily then look like women being suppressed, but generally power was very misused over that time. If we think about how the elderly were treated, if we think about how certain groups were treated through that time, it was atrocious. So, and that's a real kind of clear example of toxic masculine energy. It's negative power. It's the misuse of power. It's about, taking away freedoms and negative boundaries. And so on the contrast, what then came out of those shadows were people waking up because people were saying, actually, no, this isn't okay. I want to live differently. We want to be, in connection. And there were some gifts that came out of that in terms of awareness. Many gifts, actually. And if you think how we've risen as a collective since the atrocities of lockdown, it's quite phenomenal and quite beautiful. We're in really quite a beautiful energy. Now, it's not to say that there isn't still toxicity playing out. Of course, there is. But this balance is that the gap in this imbalance is closing. We are getting a rebalancing energy, and I'm really aware of that increasing. And I think it's a really exciting time to be alive, actually, and to see our evolution. So if you think about what else if we notice where those real huge imbalances have happened in history, we can see how we've then, there's almost been an uprising, there's been then an influx of light, there's been more awareness because those shadows have been shown. So thinking about, we think differently now about our boundaries. We think differently now perhaps about the trust that we have in the powers that be. We are increasingly moving towards, understanding our own power. And these are things that have been going on for some time as well. All the New Age movement, so to speak, is about us accessing our own power and the power in unity. So these kind of masculine attributes being boundaries, power, protection, responsibility. And again, we all have all of them as men and women within us. But if we're thinking about embracing our divine masculine side, we're thinking about firm but fair boundaries. We're thinking about positive power. We're thinking about being held, being safe, being supported. And these are also topics that people are talking about in terms of relating and interpersonal connections. Our lovely Yasmin Ibrahim, she talks a lot about this on her show around attracting, soulmates and the right kind of connection and energy and frequency that we want to bring in. She does a lovely show. Also, I've heard recently Lucy Davis, our lovely Level Up with Lucy, she talks a lot about this. So there's a lot of conversations happening. And again, this is really reflective of the energy at the moment of the astrology as well. As above, so below, we're having these conversations, we're bringing it more into awareness, we're evolving. It's incredible. It's a beautiful, beautiful energy. So the divine masculine is about, it's I've got you. It's that real I've got you energy. Like, what do you need? It's not compromising of itself because there's those firm, fair boundaries, but it's I'm here for you. I've got you. I'm a protector. I'm a provider. And again, we will have these aspects in all of us, but as a busy society and as people who are juggling lots of different roles. And, again, as a woman, I can speak from experience when I say I've definitely been in my own toxic masculinity for too often. And that's about, you're running around, you're trying to do all the things, you're trying to be the breadwinner and, number of other roles, and you can end up in this real sort of survival state. And I think this is also a bit of an epidemic of our society in terms of the busyness factor. It's not organic to the system, to well-being, to our system, to our physical system and our mental and emotional well-being to be so on the go. And this is another example of the imbalance that there has been of toxic masculinity. The working week, the 50 hour week, that you've got nothing left at the end of it in terms of your energy to pay for a house that you're never in because you're always out working, or, that kind of scenario. Excuse me. So it's a really interesting time of shift because more and more people are waking up to this, and more people are seeing this and going, actually, I want to live a bit differently. I want to, embrace more of myself, more of my essence, more of my family, more of my loved ones, and more of my purpose. And so we get to show up in the world a little bit differently. And again, not so governed. I mean, can you imagine if there was, and hopefully there won't be, but can you imagine if there was that kind of dominance in power around a lockdown type scenario again? I think people would go into that with a much different view. Certainly the amount of people that have embraced their divine masculine energy more in terms of boundaries and faith, because faith is another aspect of where we are placing our faith in terms of, do we have faith ideally in ourselves and the support, the support of structure? Where is that structure? Is that the best place for us to put our faith? So all of these questions are really being already in action. It's not even up for renewal or up for consideration. This is already happening. This energy is alive. So it's a really amazing time to reassess our structures, reassess our boundaries, reassess the avenues we place our faith in terms of power, remembering, of course, that we are our own source of power and our own source of structure first and foremost. And then, it goes out from there. So it's a fascinating topic. We're going to talk about it a little bit more as we go through the current astrology. But first, we're going to have a song break. And we've got the really beautiful dulcet tones of The Calling. Thank you, Django, for playing that one for us.
KindaSound Radio, the station for a global community.
Welcome back to the KindaSound Astrology Show with me, Stella Grace. It's great to be here with you every Friday at 10, covering a topic on astrology. Today we are covering the divine masculine energy rising, and it's been an interesting topic already so far. We're going to come on to it a little bit more throughout the current astrology because it is very relevant and very alive right now in terms of a presence and how we're seeing things playing out in the world. And let me know your feels as well if you're kind of noticing some of these themes playing out or have an awareness of some of the things that we've been talking about. To let you know, guys, there is a replay tomorrow, the same time. All the KindaSound shows are replayed at the next day at the same time. And I hope you'll stick around with me today for the Gifts Within Adversity at 11 o'clock. I've got my wonderful guest, Ian McKenna, Dr. Ian McKenna, and we're talking all things psychology and how to, very simply, and I loved it because we had the discussion. It's a recorded show, and I'm really excited for it to air at 11 because we had a fascinating conversation, but also he really summed up, which I think is really helpful too, very simple but powerful kind of tips really for accessing our wellness. And I think it's really good when it's sort of simple, short but sweet. We also look at the inspiration following deep loss as well. So I hope you'll stick around for that, for the Gifts Within Adversity at 11. And let's get back into the astrology. Also, just to mention, this podcast and all of the shows have from the previous shows will have podcasts made available soon after they air. So look out for that one as well, or you can catch up. So coming back to the astrology and the current astrological weather, now we have some beautiful aligned activated energy to support our topic today, the divine masculine rising. I'm looking at the chart right now. We're going to share my screen with you and you can see the chart there. That's amazing. And so what I'm looking at here, and I'll explain it through for the listeners on air so that it all makes sense. So we've got this huge, if you can see my cursor there, and what I'm pointing to is a huge cluster of planets in Aries. And this is giving us some amazingly dynamic energy for moving forwards at the moment. Now, I feel like this is also really kind of contradicting a little bit, but enhancing what would normally be a slower period, I feel, with Mercury retrograde. We've got Mercury in the Cazimi today, actually. This morning, that was exact UK time. That has already happened a couple of hours ago at around 8. But what the Cazimi is, and this is quite interesting for accessing our inner intuition, wellness, our inner voice, and also linking up with areas we might want to gain some more inspiration on, gain some more clarity on. The Cazimi is like a midpoint in the Mercury retrograde, and that is where the Sun and Mercury are kind of exactly going over each other in simple terms. So they are really shining a light on getting to the heart and the soul of issues around communication. And it's like a portal within a portal, actually, the Cazimi, because within the whole Mercury retrograde period, as I mentioned, it's like a midpoint. And in that heart and soul energy, in that portal, there's a real opportunity, should you wish to use it, of really accessing, data. And when I mean data, I mean like universal data, our really inner workings, our universal kind of energy and information around what we're wanting to bring in, missing pieces of the puzzle. It's an amazing time for a journaling practice. So I've been doing some short videos on my socials around tips for thriving in Mercury retrograde. So we hear, the bad rap about Mercury retrograde, but I haven't actually felt, and I'd love to hear from you guys, I haven't actually felt that kind of wading through treacle or loads of tech issues or loads of, delays that is often so associated with Mercury retrograde. And we were talking in the show a few weeks ago about it and how, reframing retrogrades is really interesting because a lot of that kind of concern around the retrograde stuff, those things can happen and they do, but there's a lot of fear around them as well, much like the eclipses. So I've not been feeling that heavy energy. Django, I think as our technical director, you are the best person to ask. How have you found the Mercury retrograde? Because it's really funny because last time we had Mercury retrograde, I remember we had a little conversation because there were issues, weren't there? How have you found this one?
It's funny, actually. Something that I had issues with for over a year got fixed.
Wow. I love that. That's reframing retrogrades.
knock on wood. It's been okay thus far.
Amazing. I love that. And I think there's a lot of there's so much dynamic Aries energy, as we were saying. It's really giving such an impetus at the minute. Those 6 planets there that we're pointing to, if you can see those 6 planets there together in Aries, including Mercury in retrograde, is just a huge firebolt of, this moving forward, this impetus, these new beginnings. And there's previous podcasts on all of that as well, if you're interested. But yeah, not the usual. It's felt definitely to me like not the usual Mercury retrograde. And with all that fire energy, there's so much forwards momentum. It's not surprising to me. So yeah, that is interesting. We've also, as well as the Cazimi, that's pointing to, as I was just touching on, a really great opportunity with the journaling practice. And that was my third and final tip over the last just over a week since Mercury retrograde started. Because a journaling practice, and this is transferable stuff to any time, any day. And a journaling practice was really a game changer for me when it became regular, because it's helpful for so many reasons. Downloading information at the end of the day, kind of releasing it from your brain before you go to bed. It just makes that space. Obviously, as well, at any point of the day, it just makes space. It clears it out of your field, and it just feels more organized. Things can feel more organized in terms of brain capacity, and making room for new ideas to come in. So I love it for that. It's also a really great reflective tool for growth. And another of the astrological alignments currently is Chiron has been a big player with the sun recently. So we've had this conjunction. So the two planets making a close relationship. And it's the strongest astrological aspect there is, the conjunction, because the two planets are aligned together, and the synergy of those planets together is the strongest blend of those two, because they're so close. They can be in the same degree, the same mathematical degree, whereas some of the other aspects are different degrees, and they're making a relationship to each other, for example, a trine, but it's not that close knit. They're kind of on top of each other, really blending their energy. So the conjunction's always super powerful. And we've just had that with the sun, our masculine life force energy, with Chiron going over the sun. Now, Chiron is our wounded healer of the zodiac. Again, these are both masculine essences. So again, we all have all the planets and all the feminine and masculine attributes in every single one of our charts and in all of our beings. But in terms of masculine energy, we've had Chiron, who is the wounded healer, the shaman, the alchemist, the kind of counselor of the zodiac, going over the sun, our divine masculine life force. So we've got this real, again, another opportunity that has kind of been going on, and it, reflects into moving forwards as well, with things changing, toxicity being healed, being seen. That's the thing, things don't change until things are seen with awareness, a light is shone on them, and then we have the opportunity to heal them. And that is a really healing portal at the moment, in terms of divine masculine energy, with Chiron going over the sun. Now, it's a fairly quick moving one, but nonetheless, it's still beautiful for divine masculine energy rising. Chiron being the wounded healer, it's not pointing to issues. And again, this is where I was thinking, this is another good energy with the journaling practice, is it doesn't just, torment us with triggers coming up and with, old things, and you think, oh my goodness, this again. But this is where a journaling practice is really helpful, because we can go, okay, what wisdom do I want to put to this time? What is triggering me, and downloading all that information on paper. What is that pointing to on a deeper level? And how can I take the wisdom from that? What is the wisdom below that trigger, below that pain point? And Chiron energy is really good for that. And generally the energy is really good for that at the moment. So a journaling practice was my third and final tip for not just surviving, but thriving in Mercury retrograde, and actually just for inspiring personal growth. So I love that for this relevant energy at the moment. I'm going to come on actually to on that note, our next song is really fitting here. We've got Xavier Rudd and Follow the Sun. And I think that's the real beauty of this message of growth, around taking the opportunities to work with these energies, to delve. But it's always about following our light. It's always about, uncovering our shadows, bringing them up into the light, not suppressing them. And, I think Xavier's put it very well with Follow the Sun. So thank you, Django, for playing that one for us now.
KindaSound, tuning in for change.
Welcome back to the KindaSound Astrology Show with me, Stella Grace, bringing you the astrological weather for the week, as well as a topic. And we've been discussing today the divine masculine energy rising. And it's been a really interesting conversation. I love this energy. I love the activation of how things are moving forwards and the signs we are getting about things moving forwards for our evolution. We are not naive to the fact that there's still issues of toxicity and we still have a way to go in terms of the kind of rebalancing, really, of rising together as divine, masculine, and feminine beings and our essences. But there's so much good stuff happening, and the astrology is really, really aligned for it, particularly over the next 20 years with Pluto in Aquarius. You know, it's about the rebalancing of the misuse of power that has been so previously abused, and that things are really changing, and it's really, really exciting. So all that is happening, not an overnight change, but as we've been saying, an incremental change over many, many years and moving forward again. There's some interesting astrology on that this week. So we can see Pluto in Aquarius. Have we still got the screen share on, Django? Amazing, thank you. So down here where I'm circling, and I'll explain for those on air so you know what I mean if you can't see the screen. I'm circling here the Pluto in Aquarius, and this is the 20-year transit of Pluto going through Aquarius, bringing a huge amount of change to our structures. And it's more about freedom, and it's more about unity, and it's really more about power to the people. But what I kind of feel with that energy is it's about us realizing our own power and our own potential. And Pluto in Aquarius is really assisting us with that. Moving on from there, we've got this beautiful Saturn and Mars conjunction in Pisces. Now, the conjunction, as I was saying before, is the most powerful aspect in astrology because the degrees are so close. They can be the same degree, or at the moment it's showing as 1 degree apart, at 14 and 15 in Pisces. And that's really a very good reminder and indication as well of this divine masculine energy. So these are two masculine essences in the zodiac. And as mentioned before, we all have them all within us, and both aspects within us, whether we're men or women. Saturn is our teacher. Saturn is the responsible, kind of disciplinarian and authoritarian, and in Pisces is giving us a reframed view on faith. So again, as we touched on earlier, it's a really fascinating time, and over the next year or so there's still another restructuring there happening with Saturn, because Pluto and Saturn are the big heavyweights who implement a lot of change in our structures over a longer period of time. And Saturn is particularly about rules and structure and the systems of things. And that being in Pisces really gives us a sense of renewal, being up for change, up for, interestingly, dissolving. Pisces has a dissolving kind of energy about it as well sometimes. So we can see this kind of like a cleansing and a clearing and a transmutation process almost into something new, into a refocused faith system. Now, this might start with whatever your faith system is. It start with you. And it's just an interesting one to consider how the kind of world stage of leaders is changing and has been changing for some time. And I think more people realizing a faith and a trust in yourself. And that is about our divine masculine power as well, having our own boundaries, being discerning. These are really interesting Saturn and masculine themes, being discerning of what we're allowing into our field, into our space, what we're discerning as credible information, for example, what we're discerning as, how we want to be treated, how we want to be ruled, how we want to live. All of these things are up for renewal. So it's a really fascinating time, again, to be alive in terms of thinking how the system is changing and how it's been changing. We can see that over the last few years alone. Excuse me, not to mention, how far we've come if we look back, not too far, actually, in terms of the imbalance of power. So it's really interesting, changing, activating energy that is for the better. Now, I'm the eternal optimist, so I appreciate that, this stuff doesn't happen overnight, and it's not all entirely free yet, or by any means all over the world, but we do have this incredible power and this manifesting power, which I talked about last week in terms of manifesting. That was around the new moon. But our creator sides in all of us have the ability to breathe in and bring in the way of being that we want to see in the world by being it, by focusing on it. As Django rightly mentioned earlier, I thought it was a great quote about, where we focus our energy on is where momentum goes. So whilst we know that there's still lots of imbalances of the masculine toxicity going on in the world, things are changing, and we also get to be a part of them changing by implementing that change within ourselves. And again, that goes back to Saturn here is offering us the opportunity to strengthen our boundaries, strengthen our systems, and how they look to us personally first, and then how that then plays out in the world. Mars and Saturn together, that conjunction, we've got a heightened energy on that because Mars brings a dynamic fire energy to wherever he touches. They are in Pisces, so they are being, as we said earlier, that dissolving energy, that's watery, that's about the collective though. So Mars, in Pisces isn't generally kind of his comfortable spot, if you like, but the beauty of it is, it's about looking at the collective. Pisces is about the collective. It's about healing. It's about faith, as we said. So it's offering energy there, basically. Mars is bringing his fiery, dynamic energy to the collective. So again, this won't be a massively long-term thing, but Pisces having Saturn there is a longer-term thing. And it's another example of this energy rebalancing and giving a collective view, which obviously starts with us as well. We've got next, it's not next to in terms of a conjunction, but we've also got here Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is its home ruler in Pisces. That's very happy there. And what that is also pointing to is a really beautiful dissolving again within the collective. So this is where, it could be a really connecting energy. Django and I were just talking about the beauty of the internet for, feeling like a global community. And Neptune in Pisces is also really stunning for that. We want to look to Saturn to bring in boundaries with that, because we don't want to get lost in the collective. We wouldn't want to, not have any boundaries. That wouldn't be divine masculine trait either. The divine masculine knows boundaries, and they're again firm but fair. They're loving boundaries. And I think Neptune in Pisces will really help to highlight where that isn't in play again, as we were talking about looking at the shadows to bring in the light, to bring in the awareness, to bring in change. Neptune in Pisces is going to show where boundaries are out of alignment or not existent enough. And Saturn will be helping us firm those boundaries up. So that's a really interesting energy as well. I'm really excited for next week's show. We've got some more huge energy and alignment to discuss then with the Jupiter and Uranus conjunction that is coming up on the 20th. And of course, the full moon in that week as well, just a few days after that. And that's going to be in Scorpio. So we've got this real gearing up as well towards the full moon. That energy will start to be felt soon. And we've also got the topic next week of using the full moon energy for release. So last week I discussed new moon manifestations and using the new moon to bring in our intentions and, plant those seeds and watch them grow by the actions that we take and how we, can become a frequency match for them. And if you want to check out that podcast, that is transferable to any new moon and the new beginnings energy of Aries as well, as we've been discussing. There's also a podcast on that one. And so next week, we're going to cover the full moon release opportunity of that energy. So I can't wait to share that with you then. Before we close with our last song, Django, is there any comments or questions that anyone wants to share?
Let me have a quick squiz. Arlo said it's her dog's name. It's her dog's Instagram account. I thought that was rather cute.
I love that. Her
name is Angie.
Oh, hi, Angie. I love that. That is cute. Amazing.
And yeah, I think that's all at the moment. I may have missed one about 5 minutes ago. I clicked share on the Instagram thing and then it went grey and I couldn't scroll down and I couldn't reload. So hopefully I didn't miss any messages between the message about the dog. And now.
No worry. We'll put that one down to Mercury retrograde.
There we go.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been amazing to be here with you today. This show's replayed again tomorrow and made available as a podcast soon. And I look forward to seeing you next week at 10.
Beautiful. What's our closing song again? We
have the gorgeous Narco Bear, and actually what an energy for the Divine Masculine Rising. It's just stunning. He, I think very rightly and honestly kind of shares a message in the song about sometimes we don't know which way to go, and sometimes it's not easy, and we can question what's going on in the world because it's so huge. And, as we touched on earlier, the atrocities are so immense that we kind of live through, but it's also about regrouping and coming back to self and coming back to unity. And I think he sums up in a really beautiful way that message, as well as the gorgeous piano riff. Is that a riff that would be called, Django?
Riff, R-I-F-F.
Okay, yeah, riff. And that gorgeous piano riff through it is just stunning. So enjoy Narco Bear.